I still remember the exact moment she handed me the envelope. It was my birthday, and my wife, Emily, had a smug little smile on her face as she slid the neatly folded papers across the dinner table. "Happy birthday, babe," she said sweetly, tilting her head like she was about to give me something special. I frowned, confused. My birthday? I hadn't expected much. Maybe a cheap cologne set or one of those generic gift cards she'd grab last minute from the grocery store. But this felt different. I picked it up, my fingers brushing over the thick, high-quality paper. It wasn't a greeting card. It was official. It was legal. Divorce papers. The words hit me like a freight train, but I kept my face completely blank. I looked up at her, waiting for the punchline. Some kind of cruel joke, right? Emily leaned forward, her elbows resting on the table, that same smug smirk never leaving her face. "I think it's time," she said with a little shrug, as if she were discussing what movie to watch. "I've already signed everything. All you have to do is put your name on the dotted line." My heart pounded in my chest, but my expression remained eerily calm. I tilted my head, examining her, almost like a scientist observing a lab rat. She was confident, no cocky. It wasn't the nervous expression of a woman breaking difficult news to her husband of 10 years. No hesitation, no guilt. That meant only one thing. She had someone else. And suddenly I knew exactly who. His name was Zach Whitmore. He was my wife's business mentor, some wealthy real estate developer she met at a networking event last year. I had seen his name pop up on her phone more times than I could count. Texts at odd hours, hushed phone calls where she'd step out onto the balcony, thinking I wouldn't notice. I did. I noticed everything. Emily was already talking again, rattling off some nonsense about how we had grown apart, how she wanted to find herself, how she was doing this for both of us. I barely heard a word because my mind was in a million directions. She expected me to break, to beg, to fall apart like some pathetic, heartbroken fool. But instead, I smiled. A slow, calculated smile. "Wait till your lover sees this," I murmured, sliding the papers back across the table toward her. Her smirk faltered, just for a split second. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice a little too sharp, a little too defensive. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms. "Oh, nothing," I said easily. "Just thinking about how he's going to react when he realizes what's really going on." Emily's posture stiffened. "What are you talking about?" I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, mocking the way she used to say it to me. "You didn't really think you were the only one keeping secrets, did you?" Her face went pale. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She had spent the last year plotting this, sneaking around, crafting her little fantasy where she left me behind like yesterday's trash and rode off into the sunset with Zach Whitmore. But she had no idea what was coming, and I couldn't wait to watch it all come crashing down. Emily's face drained of color, her hands tightening around the glass of wine she had been sipping all evening. For the first time since she had smugly handed me those divorce papers, I saw something flicker across her expression. Uncertainty. She thought she had it all figured out, that I would crumble, that I would react the way most husbands would. Rage, tears, accusations. Maybe I'd even beg her to stay, ask if we could work things out. Instead, I had smiled, and that terrified her. "Stephen," she said, her voice carefully measured now. "What are you talking about?" I leaned back in my chair, studying her, tilting my head slightly as if I were analyzing a puzzle that suddenly didn't fit together the way I thought it did. "You're not as clever as you think, Emily," I murmured, tapping my fingers on the table. She stiffened. "If this is some attempt to guilt-trip me, it won't work. I've made up my mind." "Oh, I know," I said, giving her a slow, knowing nod. "You made up your mind months ago. You think I didn't notice the late nights, the mysterious business trips, the way you started dressing like someone else entirely?" Emily swallowed hard, her grip on the wine glass tightening. She knew I had figured it out, but she had no idea how much I knew. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, tapping the screen lazily. Then I turned it toward her. Her breath hitched. On the screen was her, a photo taken from across the street, right in front of the extravagant penthouse where her precious Zach Whitmore lived. It wasn't just a one-time thing, no. I had plenty of these. Different nights, different outfits, but always the same pattern. Her car parked outside, Emily stepping into the building with a look of pure excitement on her face. She never looked at me like that. I swiped to the next picture. This time, it was her and Zach, the two of them at a private restaurant. His hand resting a little too low on her back, the way she was leaning into him, her eyes glowing with admiration. Swiped again. Emily entering a hotel, her hand in his, her wedding ring gone, her lips parted in a soft smile. Her expression wasn't that of a woman making a mistake. No, she was thrilled, and she thought I was an idiot. Emily gasped, her hand shooting out as if she was about to grab my phone, but I yanked it away before she could touch it. Where, how? Her voice was barely above a whisper. You're really bad at covering your tracks, I said, clicking the phone off and sliding it back into my pocket. She shook her head, her breathing uneven. This isn't fair, she stammered. You had someone spy on me. I chuckled darkly. Spy on you? No, sweetheart. I just paid attention. Emily's nostrils flared, and for the first time since this entire dinner began, her confidence cracked. She had been so sure of herself, so sure she would control the narrative, but I had written the script. She tried to regain composure, squaring her shoulders. So what now, Stephen? You think you can use these pictures against me? What's your plan here? I smirked. I don't need to use them against you, Emily, but I will make sure your perfect new life doesn't go as smoothly as you planned. A flicker of fear crossed her face. Zach won't care, she spat. He already knows about you. I laughed. Oh, I know he does. He just doesn't know everything. Emily swallowed. What do you mean? I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Did you tell him about your credit cards? She blinked, caught off guard. I tilted my head. About the joint accounts? The investments in your name? Oh, and let's not forget the little vacation house in Palm Beach you bought with my money. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. That's right, Emily. I knew everything. Her whole body stiffened, and she quickly tried to mask her panic, but I caught it. That moment of sheer, unfiltered fear. I don't know what you think you're going to do, Stephen, she said, forcing herself to sound calm. But if you think you can ruin my life, you're wrong. I stood up slowly, smoothing my jacket, watching her like a hunter watching his prey. Oh, sweetheart, I murmured. I don't think I can ruin your life. I know I can. Then, I leaned in, close enough to see her pupils dilate with panic. And the best part, I whispered, you'll never see it coming. Her lips parted, but before she could say another word, I grabbed the divorce papers and folded them neatly into my pocket. Thanks for the gift, I said, winking at her. Let's see how your lover feels about his surprise. And with that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving my wife sitting there, clutching her glass of wine, knowing for the first time in her life that she had no control over what happened next. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out of the restaurant, my heart pounding, not with anger, not with sadness, but with something else entirely, anticipation. Emily thought she was the one holding the cards, that I'd be a pathetic, broken man licking my wounds while she ran off into the sunset with Zach Whitmore, her precious real estate mogul. But she had underestimated me, because I wasn't just going to let her win. I was going to rewrite the ending. I drove home in complete silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. As I pulled into our driveway, the house looked the same as always. Cold, empty. It wasn't always like this. Once, it had been ours. A place filled with warmth, with late-night movie marathons, with the smell of homemade cinnamon rolls in the morning. Now it was nothing more than a set piece in Emily's grand performance. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me, and let my eyes roam over the living room. Everything in this house, the designer furniture, the expensive artwork, the imported rugs, had been handpicked by her. Not for comfort, not for us, but for status. To impress guests, to make herself feel superior. And now, all of it? Mine. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I never thought I'd have to use. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. You ready? More than ready, I said. Emily's first mistake. Underestimating me. The next morning, Emily stormed into the house, slamming the front door so hard a picture frame rattled against the wall. What the hell did you do? She shrieked, her eyes wild. I leaned against the kitchen counter, casually sipping my coffee. Morning, sweetheart, I said smoothly. Sleep well. She threw her purse onto the counter. Don't play games with me, Stephen. Zach called me, furious. He said all his credit cards were frozen. His bank accounts empty. He lost a contract worth millions overnight. I raised an eyebrow. Damn. Tough break. Emily's breath hitched, and I saw it, the flicker of realization. You, she whispered, shaking her head. You did this. I took another slow sip of my coffee. She finally understood. You think I didn't know what you were planning? I said, setting my mug down. You thought I'd just let you waltz out of my life with a man like him? I let out a small chuckle. You're not as clever as you think, Emily. Her hands balled into fists. You had no right. I cut her off with a sharp laugh. No right? Oh, sweetheart. I had every right. I took a step closer, my voice lowering to a deadly whisper. You were going to rob me blind. You already did. But you made one mistake. You left too many crumbs. She inhaled sharply, stepping back. Zach Whitmore wasn't just some miner with deep pockets. He was a man who thrived on power, and I had just stripped him of all of it. You have no idea what you've done, she said, her voice shaking. Zach, he's dangerous when he's cornered. You think you're in control, but you just made yourself a target. I smirked. Let him come. Emily's face twisted in pure frustration. You think this is a joke? You think ruining his career, his finances, his entire life is something you can just walk away from? I tilted my head. You did it to me, didn't you? She sucked in a breath, her lips parting slightly, but no words came out. I took another step closer. You chose him over me, Emily, I murmured. Now you get to deal with the consequences of that choice. Her entire body trembled. Stephen, you need to fix this. Now. I chuckled darkly. Oh, sweetheart, I said, using her own condescending tone against her. You don't get to make demands anymore. Emily's phone buzzed violently in her pocket, and she scrambled to pull it out. The moment she saw the name flashing across the screen, her face fell. I already knew who it was. Zach Whitmore, and he wasn't calling for a friendly chat. Better answer that, I said with a smirk. I have a feeling your perfect little life just went up in flames. Emily hesitated, then swiped the screen with shaky fingers. Zach. I watched as her entire expression changed, her confident, smug demeanor gone, replaced with something I had never seen before, fear. And I just stood there, drinking my coffee, as I listened to her world collapse around her. Emily's hand trembled as she held the phone to her ear. Zach, please listen. I didn't need to hear the other side of the conversation to know exactly what was happening. Zach Whitmore was unraveling. I leaned back against the counter, taking another slow sip of my coffee, watching as my soon-to-be ex-wife's world burned to the ground. Her face twisted into sheer panic. I don't know how this happened, Zach. You need to calm down. Calm down? I almost laughed. Zach Whitmore wasn't the kind of man who calmed down when his money vanished into thin air. I had seen the articles, read the rumors. Zach had built his entire empire on debt, manipulation, and carefully hidden corruption. He wasn't just some rich businessman. He was a predator who surrounded himself with people he could control. And Emily? She had walked right into his web, thinking she was in charge. Now she was caught in it. Her eyes darted to me, filled with desperation. Stephen, she whispered, covering the phone's mic with her hand. You need to fix this. Now. I smirked. I don't think so. Her face contorted with pure disbelief. Are you insane? He's going to. She was cut off as Zach's voice bellowed through the phone, loud enough that I could hear the rage spilling through the speaker. Emily flinched, trying to stammer out a response, but Zach wasn't listening. He was threatening her now. I watched as she turned white as a sheet, gripping the counter for support. And I just stood there, enjoying the moment. Because for once in her life, Emily was powerless. She had spent years manipulating me, twisting me into what she wanted. But now the woman who had always been in control, who had laughed in my face while planning to run off with another man, was terrified. And she had nowhere to run. She swallowed hard and nodded quickly into the phone. "Okay, Zach. I'll handle it." Then she hung up, her hands shaking. I raised an eyebrow. "Trouble in paradise?" She whipped around, eyes blazing. "You have no idea what you've done." I chuckled. "Oh, I think I do." Emily inhaled sharply, trying to compose herself. She squared her shoulders, forcing herself back into the role she always played. The confident, untouchable woman who always had a plan. But this time, her performance wasn't convincing. "Stephen," she said slowly, carefully, "I know you're upset, but this has gone too far. You don't understand. Zach isn't like other men. He doesn't just forgive things like this." I tilted my head. "Good." Emily's lips parted slightly, caught off guard. What? I set my coffee down, stepping closer. "You think I'm afraid of Zach?" I murmured. "You think I'm afraid of you?" Emily's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I leaned in. "You thought you could humiliate me," I whispered. "That you could replace me. That I'd just roll over and let you walk away with everything." I took another step forward. "But you were wrong." Emily backed up against the counter, trapped. I smirked. "And now you get to watch it all fall apart." She clenched her jaw. "This isn't over." I chuckled. "Oh, sweetheart." I reached into my pocket, pulling out the neatly folded divorce papers she had given me. Then, in one slow, deliberate motion, I ripped them in half. Her eyes widened in horror. "You don't get to decide when this ends," I murmured, tossing the shredded paper onto the counter. Emily froze, because she had just realized something. She wasn't divorcing me. I was divorcing her, and I wasn't going to let her walk away clean. She was about to lose everything, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Emily just stood there, staring at the torn divorce papers on the counter, like she couldn't believe what had just happened. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the one pulling the strings, and she hated it. I could see it in her eyes, the way her mind was racing, desperately trying to figure out a way to get control back. But she had no idea that it was already too late. I had planned for this. I had been waiting for this. I stepped past her, walking toward the hallway like I didn't have a care in the world. "Where are you going?" she snapped, finally regaining her voice. I smirked. "To pack." Her breath hitched. "Pack?" I turned back toward her, slipping my hands into my pockets. "Yeah." I figured since I'm not signing those divorce papers, I should probably make myself comfortable for a little while longer. Emily's lips parted slightly. "Stephen," she started, trying to sound firm. "You don't live here anymore." I chuckled. "Oh, sweetheart. You really should have read the fine print before you started plotting your great escape." I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward her. Her face drained of color the second she saw what was on the screen. A legal document, a property agreement signed by both of us. "See," I said, tilting my head. "While you were busy sneaking off to your boyfriend's penthouse, I was talking to a very good lawyer. Turns out the way you handled our finances, the assets you moved around, the investments you made without my consent, that gives me the right to freeze everything." Emily inhaled sharply. "You're bluffing." I smirked. "Am I?" I swiped to the next document. A court order. One that put an immediate hold on all of her accounts. One that legally prevented her from selling the house, liquidating our joint assets, or moving any more money around until further notice. I watched as her hands shook. You had no right." "I had every right." I cut in smoothly. "See, while you were out planning your new life, I was making sure you wouldn't be able to afford it." Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to say something, wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because for the first time, she had no power here. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Emily was seething. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, trying to come up with some kind of way out. And then, ding-dong. The sound of the doorbell shattered the silence. Emily stiffened. I didn't move. Ding-dong. Louder this time, more insistent. Emily's breathing grew uneven. I watched as her hands clenched at her sides. I raised an eyebrow. Expecting company? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned on her heel and practically sprinted toward the door. I followed, slower, more deliberate. And when she yanked it open, she froze. Her entire body went rigid. I stepped up behind her, peering over her shoulder, and there he was, Zach Whitmore. His suit was wrinkled, his tie was loose, his usually slicked-back hair was slightly disheveled, and his eyes, they were blazing with fury. Emily swallowed hard. Zach, But before she could finish, he stormed past her, straight into the house. I shut the door behind him. Emily turned, her face pale as she tried to keep her composure. Zach, she said quickly. I was just about to call you. Cut the crap, Emily, he growled. I smirked. This was already more entertaining than I thought it would be. You told me you had everything under control, Zach snapped, shoving a hand through his hair. You said he was stupid, that he wouldn't fight back. Emily's eyes flickered to me. I could see pure panic in them now. Zach let out a bitter laugh. Jesus, Emily, you screwed me over worse than him. Her jaw clenched. You didn't what? He spat. You didn't lie to me? You didn't steal from me? Emily's whole body went stiff. She had stolen from him? Oh, this was getting interesting. Zach let out a sharp breath, turning to me for the first time. His eyes narrowed. You think this is funny? I grinned. I think it's poetic. His jaw tightened. You have no idea what you've done, he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. Zach exhaled slowly, as if trying to control himself. Then he stepped forward. Too close. Emily inhaled sharply. Zach. I just smiled. Because if Zach Whitmore thought he was the predator here, he was dead wrong. Zach Whitmore stood in my living room like he owned the place. His jaw clenched so tight I swore I could hear his teeth grinding. His expensive suit, one that probably cost more than my entire mortgage, was rumpled. His tie hanging loose around his neck like a noose. But what fascinated me most wasn't his appearance. It was his eyes. They weren't just angry, they were desperate. And that's how I knew he had already lost. Emily stood between us, her body rigid, as if she could somehow stop whatever was about to happen. But she couldn't. She had no control here anymore. Zach let out a slow, sharp breath through his nose, like a bull ready to charge. I'll ask you one time, he muttered, his voice low and dangerous. Fix this. I tilted my head. Fix what, exactly? Zach's hands curled into fists at his sides. You know damn well what. You froze my accounts. You destroyed my reputation overnight. You took away everything. I smirked. Oh, Zach, you really should have been more careful about where you put your money. Emily turned toward me sharply. Stephen, she snapped, her voice strained. This isn't a joke. I let out a low chuckle. No, it's not. I walked past them both, stepping into my office. I could hear their footsteps as they followed. Emily's hesitant, Zach's heavy with frustration. I sat behind my desk, casually booting up my computer. Zach slammed his hands down on the desk. I don't have time for your games. I leaned back in my chair, lacing my fingers together. You had plenty of time when you were screwing my wife, I said smoothly. You had plenty of time when you were plotting behind my back, Zach. But now that the tables have turned, now you're in a rush. His face twisted with fury. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I interrupted. See, you built your entire empire on a foundation of lies and fraud. You manipulated people, you used them, you thought you were untouchable. I leaned forward. But you made one mistake. Zach's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. And what's that? I smiled. You let Emily handle your paperwork. His entire body went still, and that's when I knew he had no idea what I was talking about. Emily stiffened next to him. "Stephen," she said quickly, "whatever you think you found, it's not." "Sit down, sweetheart," I murmured, clicking on a file. "You're going to want to see this." The screen flickered to life, and I opened a series of encrypted documents. Emily gasped. Zach's face drained of color. Because there, in full display, were the financial records, bank transfers, shell companies, off-the-books transactions. Fraud. And at the bottom of every document, Emily's signature. She took a step back, shaking her head. That's not possible." Zach's fury snapped. "You signed this?" he bellowed, rounding on her so fast she flinched. I didn't know," he roared. "You told me everything was handled. You told me there was no trail." I laughed. "Turns out, she's just as bad at covering her tracks as she is at being a faithful wife." Zach turned back to me, his nostrils flaring. "You're bluffing. This won't hold up in court." I shrugged. "I don't need it to." Zach's jaw twitched. "What the hell does that mean?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. "It means that I already sent copies to a few very important people." Zach froze. Emily whimpered. I smirked. "The IRS, the SEC. Oh, and let's not forget your business partners." A long, suffocating silence settled over the room. Then, finally, Zach spoke, his voice hollow. "You don't know what you've done." I leaned back, stretching lazily. "No, Zach, you don't know what you've done." He stared at me, his hands trembling slightly. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out. Emily collapsed into the chair across from me, her breathing shallow. "You," she whispered, her eyes glassy. "You just ruined him." I took another sip of my coffee. Good. For the first time in years, Emily looked small. Not the confident, smug woman who always had a plan. Not the woman who walked into a restaurant and handed me divorce papers like a birthday gift. No. Now, she was just a desperate woman whose world had just shattered. Her lip trembled. "Stephen, I held up a hand. Don't." She swallowed hard, nodding quickly. "I get it," she whispered. "You win." I raised an eyebrow. "Win?" She licked her lips, forcing a weak smile. "You got your revenge. You took everything from Zach. You proved your point. But we don't have to keep doing this, Stephen. We can move on. We can end this peacefully." I studied her carefully. Even now, when she had nothing left, she was still trying to manipulate me. I chuckled. "Peacefully?" I murmured. "You didn't give me that option when you handed me those divorce papers, sweetheart." Emily stiffened. "You didn't give me that option when you planned to steal my money and disappear." Her hands trembled. "You didn't give me that option," I whispered, my voice low and lethal. "When you looked me in the eye and told me I was nothing to you." Emily flinched, and for the first time, I saw something else in her eyes. Regret. Real, genuine regret. But it was too damn late. She wiped at her face, swallowing hard. "So, what now?" I smiled. "Now, sweetheart," I murmured, standing up. "You get to watch your empire burn too." Emily sat motionless, her lips slightly parted, as if she wanted to say something, but for the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. No clever lie, no manipulation, no fake tears that could undo the disaster she created. She had lost everything, and the worst part? She knew it was coming. Now, I leaned against my desk, arms crossed, watching as reality crashed down on her. "You were never in control, Emily," I murmured. "You just thought you were." Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. She swallowed hard, then tried again. "Stephen, please." I tilted my head. "Please what?" Her fingers dug into her thighs, her shoulders hunched forward in defeat. "I made a mistake," she whispered. You thought you were untouchable," I finished for her. "That you could screw me over, walk away, and never face the consequences." She let out a soft, shaky breath. Then, she did something I never expected. She started to laugh. The laugh started off small, just a chuckle, but then it grew, twisted, broken, almost hysterical. I raised an eyebrow. Something funny? She shook her head, wiping her eyes. You think you won, she said breathlessly. I smirked. I know I did. She let out another short laugh, then straightened up, smoothing her hands down her skirt like she was reassembling herself. Stephen, she said softly, her tone almost amused. You really think ruining Zach means you ruined me? I narrowed my eyes. Her lips curled into a slow, sickly sweet smile. You think I didn't plan for this? For the first time in this entire game, I felt something shift. I had destroyed Zach. I had ripped apart everything he built, leaving him a shell of a man. And Emily had just stood there, shaking, watching it happen. But now she looked like she knew something I didn't. And I hated that. I pushed off my desk, stepping toward her. What did you do? Her smile grew, and then she pulled out her phone. I stiffened. She tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward me. My stomach dropped, because there, displayed in clear, painfully sharp resolution, was a series of bank transactions. My bank transactions. Money transfers I had made, records that, to someone who didn't know better, looked a hell of a lot like fraud. I inhaled sharply, keeping my face completely blank. Where did you get that? Emily grinned. Oh, Stephen, you didn't really think I'd go into this without an insurance policy, did you? I clenched my jaw because for the first time since this game began, I realized I had made a mistake. I had been so focused on tearing her world apart that I hadn't thought about how she might do the same to me. The room felt smaller now, the walls pressing in around me. I forced a slow, even breath. You think you can pin that on me? I asked. She tilted her head, still smiling. Oh, sweetheart, she mimicked, using my own words against me. I don't need to. All I have to do is send this to the right people. She tapped her screen again, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The files were already sent to me. A warning. A message. She wanted me to see what she was capable of. I met her gaze. If you do this, you'll go down with me. She smirked. Maybe, but I have connections. You think I just latched on to Zach for his money? I gritted my teeth, because she was right. Emily wasn't just a gold digger. She was a social chameleon. She knew exactly who to align herself with, who to charm, who to manipulate. And if she was telling the truth, she had one last card to play, a lifeline that could keep her afloat while I sank. I exhaled sharply, setting my phone down. So that's your play? I asked. Blackmail. She shrugged. Call it what you want. But if you come after me, Stephen, I will drag you down with me. I clenched my jaw. For a long, painful moment we just stared at each other. Two people who had spent years together, two people who had once loved each other. And now we were enemies. Finally, I let out a quiet chuckle. You know what, Emily? She arched an eyebrow. You almost had me, I admitted. I almost believed you still had control. Her smile faltered, just a fraction. I stepped forward, lowering my voice to a deadly whisper. But you forgot one thing. She blinked. What? I smirked. You're not the only one with connections. Her lips parted slightly, and then I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and her world came crashing down. Emily's smirk flickered, just for a second. She had played her final card, thinking it would back me into a corner, that I'd crumble under the weight of her blackmail, just like she expected me to crumble when she handed me those divorce papers weeks ago. But she had no idea I had already anticipated this move. I tapped my phone screen one last time and slid it across the desk toward her. Go ahead, I murmured. Take a look. Emily hesitated. Then, with a flicker of nervous curiosity, she reached out and picked up the phone. Her eyes widened as she read the screen. Her smug confidence dissolved into sheer disbelief. She blinked rapidly, shaking her head. No, this isn't. Oh, but it is, I said smoothly, leaning back in my chair. And I have plenty more where that came from. She swallowed hard. How? I chuckled. Sweetheart, did you really think you were the only one gathering evidence? Her face paled. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. You weren't careful, Emily. You were too busy playing your little game, too focused on winning. that you never stopped to think maybe someone was playing you, too. She shook her head again. No, Stephen, you don't. I knew from the beginning that you were planning to leave me. I interrupted. I knew about Zach, about the money transfers, about the fraud. I let out a slow exhale. Hell, I even knew about the offshore account you set up in your maiden name. Her breath hitched. Bullseye. I smirked. Oh yeah, you really thought that was well hidden, didn't you? Emily gripped the edge of the desk, her fingers trembling. And that's when she finally realized she wasn't just losing. She was already done. I stood up slowly, adjusting my jacket. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm, controlled. Emily flinched. You're going to sign over your share of the house to me, I continued. You're going to walk away with nothing. No alimony, no payout, no money from our accounts. She inhaled sharply, her face twisting, and I cut in, my voice dropping slightly. You're going to withdraw your little threat against me, because if you don't, sweetheart, I will personally hand over everything I have on you to the authorities. Her lips parted slightly, her breathing shaky. She knew I had backed her into a dead end. If she tried to take me down, I'd drag her down with me. And unlike me, Emily had no way out. She wasn't connected enough to dodge the fraud charges. She wasn't powerful enough to make this disappear. She had built an empire of lies, and I had just set fire to all of it. Her hands trembled as she exhaled shakily. You're really going to do this? I smiled. I already did. Silence stretched between us. Then, finally, she slumped forward, defeated. She had nothing left. She had to surrender. She grabbed the pen off my desk and, with shaking fingers, signed everything away. Her house, her money, her power. When she was done, she let out a shaky breath and looked up at me. For the first time in her life, she looked lost. What now? She whispered. I picked up the signed papers, folded them neatly, and tucked them into my pocket. Now, I said, turning toward the door, now you get to live the life you chose. I walked out without looking back. And Emily Carter? She was left sitting in my office, staring at the ruins of the life she destroyed with her own hands. A week later, I stood in front of the house, my house, watching as the moving trucks finished packing up the last of Emily's things. She was gone. She had no money, no career, and after everything I leaked about her financial fraud, she was officially blacklisted in every social and business circle she once thrived in. She wasn't living with Zach Whitmore either. After the scandal broke, Zach did what men like him always do. He threw her under the bus to save himself. The last I heard, Emily was staying at a cheap extended-stay motel on the edge of town, scraping by with what little she had left. Poetic, really. She had spent years looking down on me. Now she was beneath me. And I had everything I needed. The house, the money, and most importantly, my freedom. I smirked to myself, breathing in the crisp morning air. It was a new day, and for the first time in years, I felt alive again.